Welcome back to the Win with Dice podcast, a podcast featuring members of the Win with Dice team. I'm Calvin, and I'm joined here by Ramon.
Hey guys, this is the Win with Dice podcast. This podcast all about tabletop RPGs. Calvin and I like to take a casual personal hobby, so we like to talk about the games that we run and the games that we play and the cool, wonderful people we get to experience the hobby with. If this is your first time kind of getting into tabletop RPGs and you haven't had yourself a game, what are you doing? Go find yourself a table and go have some fun. But you are a player at someone's table and you haven't GM'd yet, hey, maybe it's your turn to jump behind the GM screen and run a game for your friends.
Indeed. So this week, we're going to get into talking about an RPG that Ramon has been working on. We did mention it some time ago as the Living Legend RPG. Some recent updates have been made to it, some recent playtests, and we're just going to chat about, creating a game. But before we get into all that, we have to get to the most important part of the show, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week.
Yes, the Win with Dice Weekly GM Tip of the Week. Brought to you by Calvin. Thanks, Calvin.
Yeah. So I think I might have mentioned this on the podcast before, if not maybe in conversation, but I have sort of a very good problem to have right now in that I had a bunch of different characters I had to create and level up for various upcoming games. And some of the characters, like, I've managed to, because some of them already either already existed or I just started putting stuff together, but I managed to make like these music playlists for these characters, things that sort of like I have playing in the background while I'm putting numbers in their sheet or just writing out their backstory. And I find that sort of thing really helps to set like the mood for a character, if that makes sense. Especially a new, fresh one that I'm going to be starting to play soon. It sort of helps to have some like tone to work with. So this is more of a player-facing thing, so I'm thinking about it in terms of just more creating player characters. But it's also very useful as a GM to sort of, maybe have your own different music playlists for different moods. If you have combat music playlists that you use in game or background music playlists, you can use those as well for when you're doing world building and things like that. Just to, again, help set the tone of your world, help get you into that mindset. And if you as a player, if you do have these music playlists, there are specific songs that are tied to your character. I did have a player recently, like they have a playlist that's related to their character. There's one particular song that they're, it's tied specifically to that character. And they sent me that list and that song, and it's kind of been in my head. It did end up on my own, like, personal music playlist outside of, like, game stuff. But there was one particular piece from it, or one set of lyrics from it, that I did work into the game as a very specific reference for I guess, that player alone to notice. Yeah, I think that's something that can help your GM, work your character's story into the world of the game itself if you're playing in a just a tabletop RPG.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely have done this for the Renegades of the Drift actual play, or I guess that we recorded. Yeah, my character had a playlist. I made a playlist on YouTube for it, and it was like mostly just Beastie Boys, which was pretty fun. Specifically, Sabotage was the track that was like the thing that went through my head every single time I played that character. So, like, it's cool to like get that kind of energy. And just kind of like, even if you're maybe in a rut or something like that, or again, share it with the GM so the GM can add to playlists of all the characters' music or whatever like that. So when they're thinking about the character or planning stuff ahead for them, then they can listen to music and get kind of in the same headspace. Mm-hmm. I like to also have like my standard fighting playlist that I like to put my players onto, and then I have like a secondary kind of creepier, more weirder playlist for like when things get intense and spooky. And I kind of flip back and forth between those during like combat to kind of set the tone. But like video games do it. Video games have different songs. I mean, I went actually recently. I went and started listening to all of the old Pokemon town songs, and I was like, these are pretty vibing, and I could like bring back the memories. So like, if you have a specific song or a specific playlist for a place in your world, that could also be like a really great way of like setting the mood, setting the tone, and getting the players like into it. You know what I mean? Like when they finally get back to that town that they keep visiting and that the music picks up, and then they're like, oh yeah, we're back home,
Yeah, exactly. As well, also, like, I think Eld is the one who had mentioned like having theme songs for your RPGs, like opening and ending songs, which I really like the idea of. I feel like I kind of have that for some of my games now, because there are certain songs that are just the theme song for that campaign in my mind. So that's what we play at the beginning and end of each session.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I want to start doing that with ours, but I think for the pirate campaign or any campaign I play IRL, it's definitely just the Iron-Blooded Orphans, the Gundam Iron Blood Orphans soundtrack. You know, the one song that they play all the time.
That has been our combat playlist for like as long as I can remember.
It's been as long as IBO has been out because I have not found anything else that gets my juices going. So I'm just like, I don't know. It's the right mix of like drums and like violins and strings and stuff like that to make it sound epic, but heart racing enough for combat. So everything else, every time I listen to it, I'm like, this isn't it. So
yeah, no, that is like on my own stuff. Like I like that soundtrack, but I don't put that stuff on my playlist because it's like, no, this is for those games.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then it could be like your signature, like even when Ramon is DMing, it's just the IVO playlist.
Yes.
So you guys know what game you're in, right? The mood, set the mood, set the vibes. Yeah, bring in some music in your games you haven't done already, and make those playlists. Make them unique. The same way how you pick out your cool monsters and stuff like that. Pick out some cool songs for it to go with it, right?
Exactly.
Ooh, and bad guys. Oh, bad guy playlist just to get in the zone as being a bad guy. Yeah, that's the real sauce.
Bad guys with a theme song.
Yeah. And then you could like play it before they enter the scene, and everybody could be like, "Oh no, it's this asshole."
Not again.
Yeah, lots of fun. Yeah, not again, right? Lots of fun. Yeah, but yeah, there's your tip of the week, folks. Incorporate playlists and music, and have different ones. Just another thing that you can use as a GM or even as a player for world building or setting the tone for your characters or NPCs or world or whatever.
Another tool in the toolbox.
Yes.
All right, so let's hop into the episode. So Ramon, you have been working on the Living Legend TTRPG. Yeah, do you want to just give people like a brief overview of like what the game is? Like not like mechanically and stuff, but just like the intent of it?
Well, first off, Calvin, it's no longer called Living Legend.
Oh, it's
I
not?
finally found a better name.
You did.
I finally found a better name. I don't know. Naming stuff is actually one of the hardest parts about making anything. Jeez, like you want it to sound cool but specific to what you're trying to do. But I'm calling it now Versus and Versus the TTRPG, kind of like Versus from like fighting games. That's kind of the idea. It is a fighting game based TTRPG, or inspired by. Wanted to kind of emulate the feeling of not actual combat, but just kind of like the flow of that back and forth that you kind of would have in like a 2D fighter or like a beat 'em up or something like that, or I guess real martial arts or fighting people. But it's not actually like that because that would be too much things to simulate, right?
Right.
Yeah, definitely want to also shout out another TTRPG called Panic at the Dojo, which definitely is like the same vein of what I'm trying to accomplish, where they're wanting to do like, it's based off like fighting games and there's different styles and stuff like that. That game is a real cool inspiration, a real cool look at what TTRPGs could be. I don't know, it sits in a cool place of like it being incredibly different but still involve dice, but the dice don't matter that much, but they do. It's interesting. Okay. Definitely gonna put it on the list of RPGs to review at some point in the future.
Yes, that is a long and continuously growing list.
But yeah, so the Versus TTRPG, or in my I guess it's called Project Versus. I don't know what it'll stick, but it is a combat focused table RPG. I'm not too concerned about the narrative stuff right now because I definitely can port over some narrative influences from other games, so I'm not too worried about figuring that out, making that feel good. But the combat specifically is combat focused. It's on the grid. It's a group of players, or you could have a one-on-one fight, and it's about getting back and forth. It's about like attacking, countering, waiting, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of fun, I think.
Yeah, you had mentioned having this fighting game inspiration. Is there any like specific ones you're referring to, or just like in general the feeling of that attack and counter?
Mean, yeah, all of them really. I think specifically it's I've been playing a lot of Tekken. That actually inspired me a lot recently to get back into working on this project. Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, like I've played a couple of fighting games now. I'm actually pretty new to fighting games in general, but like as I kind of dive into it more, like I picked up Guilty Gear as like my first real fighting game that I dived into like when it came out, Guilty Gear Strive specifically, and fell in love with the genre. And I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to be the fighting game guy in my friend group because and then immediately thought I was super good, picked up Tekken, and then my friend who has been playing for ever since they were young, and they're like, oh yeah, I haven't played Tekken in a long time, they just proceeded to kick my ass, and I was like, there's much to learn. But yeah, been getting my ass kicked on ranked and Tekken over the holidays really made me want to work on this tabletop RPG.
Fair.
But a lot of cool stuff. I guess we could just go into the mechanics. Yeah, I wanted to have like for the vibe would be like the players are martial artists or those fighting game type of characters, cleaning up the streets from like gangsters, or defeating like evil martial artists, or like being attacked by like the Foot Clan if you're playing Ninja Turtles. Like, I want it to be that kind of like a little pulpy, a little anime, a little wushu kind of vibe.
Okay. All right, so let's get into the mechanical stuff then, because I think basically how you set it up here, like I think attacking is sort of the thing that stands out the most. So let's get into how that works in the mechanics.
Yeah, so the basis of the game is that it's kind of like a compared skill roll. So the attacker would roll an attack skill check, which involves rolling 2 dice at a minimum. And then the defender will have to choose whether they want to dodge, guard, or counter. Dodging is probably the best. That's like kind of middle of the road in terms of like what you want to do, because then you won't get hit and you get to move. Countering is risky because like you could stop the attack and do a little damage on somebody else's turn, but they could land the hit and you would be in a worse position. Or you can guard, which is like not the safest option, but it's the one where you get to take the least amount of damage if it doesn't go in your way. Which, like, in terms of like bringing it back to like fighting games, it's kind of like how it is, where it's like, you can try and whiff punish them, right, where you cause them to miss, or you could try and evade them by like backstepping, dodging, jumping, or whatever their attack, or you can just guard, which is the safest option, but it doesn't leave you at any sort of advantage, typically. And it's kind of bringing it back to like TTRPGs in general. Like, I find that like specifically the D20 ones, it's not like, it's interesting, but it's not that interesting being on the defensive end of stuff. Like when you just have to take whatever someone's coming at you with, right? I mean, I know that there are some games with some more options on the defending side, but the fights never feel that dynamic. But I guess it's like I needed a game that was quick to resolve, but there's like a lot of tension in terms of what's going to happen, like the turn to turn, but also like involved on the receiving end, the defender's end, where it's like, it's not this like your only defense is a static number that somebody's trying to beat, right?
Right.
Which makes it like a little bit more complicated for people to run, but with the numbers and the dice, it's not that big of a deal.
Okay. Yeah, that was something that I had been thinking. I think probably this definitely came up when we were talking about the game before. Yeah, you do have more to do as a defender if you're actively trying to roll something to evade damage, and more specifically if you're trying to decide how you want to deal with that damage. Yeah, instead of just having, that static AC or whatever it may be in a game, which would definitely be a bit easier to deal with, for sure. But yeah, I can see, the type of game that you're trying to make here. I mean, we'll get into the playtest that we just did, but it does make each individual round of a combat feel less just like, you're just trying to roll over a number, and more that you're trying to, how to best put this, more that you're trying to react in the correct way to what your opponent is doing, versus just having the higher number at any given round.
Yeah, exactly. And because of the dice and the way that they are, like, there isn't really a chance for static numbers to be added into a scenario. So, my favorite line Calvin has ever said is, "There's always a 1 on every die," which he probably stole from somebody else. But like, that's the one I
steal that from
to.
Alex. Yes.
Okay, well, thanks Alex for influencing Calvin. So, I mean, like, it like stuck out to me so hard, and I was like, yeah, it's true. Like, there's always a chance, right? Like, and that's basically what it was. The game. So the game, you have a skill like rank, so it goes from like E to S tier, right? And everyone in rank has like a die associated with like a skill rank die, going from like a 1, which is like E, to like a D12, which is rank S, and you roll a D6 accompanying that, and then that's your attack roll. And then on the defending end, if you wanted to dodge, it's basically like your speed rank, and you do the same thing, and whoever gets the higher number wins. And in terms of a tie, it's called danger time if there's a tie, and then you roll a d6, each party, the attacker and defender, and then you add that to the total. And it was so cool. I don't know, it gets really intense sometimes when there's a little bit of back and forth on the rolls, and one person gets this thing, and then they spend some resources to get the number up, and then like, oh, we're matching, and then like we're like, oh, it's danger time, so then both of us roll off, and they roll the same number, and they're like, oh god, and then you roll again. It brings that kind of like little moments of like hand-to-hand combat back and forth, like somebody's about to like punch you, but you duck over, but the guy's like, oh, actually I faded you out, and I'm gonna go this way, and then he's like, actually I already thought about that, and then you go that way, and that's way the dice can like spell out the narrative. Or like, you know, those cool moments in anime where like two people's like fists meet and then you're like clashing and you're like, who's gonna win? Right?
I mean, it feels very JoJo's, but that's probably because that's my main anime reference.
That's a success. That's the success of that, I think. I mean, if you get your game to make people think about JoJo's, I'm pretty sure you've won. Cause
yeah, I do like the back and forth there. I do like that fits, because the D6 is kind of like a tight roll compared to other die. Like you only have 6 results, so it's entirely possible you can tie again. This might be a question for a different section of this discussion, but I am curious if you're planning to do anything else mechanically with danger time, just as a, you know, as a status in rounds, if you might have an ability that only functions in danger time. But that's probably we could probably talk about that when we get into more like future or more mechanic stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I put a name to it, because, you know, I haven't figured it all out yet, but like having an ability that procs off of danger time, that would be pretty cool. I don't know how often danger time would actually trigger, but when it does, it would be cool to have an ability that triggers. It probably won't be an ability that just says like you just win danger time. It probably has to gain some resource or something like that you can spend later if you get into danger time, which would be pretty cool. More than likely, it would be something that says that you actually, instead of missing, you just trigger danger time, and then you're like, oh. I'll put it all into one attack, like. So yeah, we talked about attacking, we talked about defending. So kind of getting into, I guess I just didn't finish off the guarding portion of it is, you have like a toughness skill, which is like uses the skill rank value, which is basically just like whatever the dice is, half of that number. Like if it's a D4, the value is 2, so it's half of 4. Except for E, which is 1, so it's always 1, because we only do with whole numbers in the game. So that value is minus from any damage that is rolled against you, and the damage is specified by the type of attack being used. So in fighting games, you have light attacks, you have medium attacks, you have heavy attacks. Sometimes there's like different ones in there, but essentially it's like lights are fast attacks, mediums are like, you know, mid-range attacks, and heavies are those big, slow, cool moves that do a lot of damage. So the damage in that one is like a D4, D6, D8, and that's rolled against your toughness, and whatever that exceeds it, that's how much damage you actually take. But you forgo any rolling. So if you choose to guard, the person automatically hits you and it gets to apply any effects to you, which means that like if someone's gonna send you flying and you decide to block it, you're still gonna go flying, but you might not take the damage and you could still survive or whatever that's happening, right? But there's risk involved with trying to get those like higher damage in with those bigger damage die, where countering comes in, and when someone tries to use a big heavy attack on you and you press a light button to kind of like jab them out. I learned this a lot in Tekken. If people playing Tekken, you know what I mean? Like, someone tries to do something that's super duper long startup, you can jab them out of whatever they're doing, and then all of a sudden you're in the positive and can take back your turn. But yeah, so countering heavy attacks, it's medium or light. Countering medium attacks is light attacks, and light attacks can't be countered because they're too fast in the game.
Yeah. So, but you do have to have some attack that falls under that category to be able to counter with it. Although everyone does have light attacks, as I recall.
Yeah, so there's always an opportunity for someone to use all of the defensive options, except being attacked by a light attack, which means you can't counter it. But it's fine. It shouldn't be too bad for you taking a little light jab. You're big, cool, strong martial arts person.
Yeah. So what I like about the system, because when we were playing it, I usually chose just to guard against different attacks, at least for the first round or two. But it is like, you know, the least risk and kind of the least reward sort of thing, or at least that's kind of how it felt on my end. Because it's like you are going to take that damage, but you can mitigate it a bit. But the other options, like you will take full damage, but you have to, like, unless you succeed at a roll. So they are, like, they feel like the more risky thing to me, given, I guess, the dice math involved. Because even with, like, a d6 plus a d4 versus 2d6, like, their peaks are still kind of close to each other, I would think. Maybe only, like, 2 numbers off. So there's still like a pretty high chance for either result to be the higher one.
Well, yeah, I mean, lots of times I've hit you guys with rolling that d6 plus d4, right? Like that baseline value. And you guys are rolling d6s, d8s, or whatever, and I still was able to lens a couple hits on you guys. But speaking of which, the cool thing about the game is critical hits are landed, I should say, if you roll a maximum value on the damage die. So light attacks critical hit on a 4, so that's like a quarter, like a 25% chance, but as like the damage dice get higher, it gets less and less likely to happen. But if you do land a critical hit, you get to apply this thing called stun, which is like supposed to represent hit stun in fighting games. So if someone who has a lot of stun on them, when they try and like attack or defend themselves or something like that, the attacker gets some advantage over them. Or they can get edge, which is like advantage. So edge is like you get a boost on yourself. So when you land a critical hit, you could apply stun to somebody, or you can gain edge, so you can be better at stuff. And edge kind of like buffs up your defensive numbers. So like you can dodge a little better if you want to spend it. You can defend a little better if you want to spend it, just because you're like kind of more in control of the flow of the battle. So you're able to like increase those numbers a little bit. Or you can spend edge on abilities that say you can spend edge to do X or Y, right? So they can make attacks a little bit cooler than they were before, just because you set yourself up for like that cool combo or something like that, right? But I mean, anybody with it kind of like the opposite. Anybody with a decent amount of toughness can just ignore light attacks because it's only a 4. So Calvin was playing a character that had toughness value of 4, and they were basically immune to light attacks, which meant I had to always use the riskier medium attacks, which opened me up for counters and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of like the little, like, I call them tokens. But yeah, the stun tokens and the edge tokens can really kind of alter the battle. And like, you have to, on every interaction or every turn, you have to kind of account for like, oh, I just got a crit, or oh, I have so much stun. What am I going to do? Am I going to defend myself? What's going to happen, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I do think that there is a lot more decision making to do on each attack, which can be seen as a good or a bad thing depending on how people want to look at it. We did have like when you were running the test game with me and Tim, like we were seeing this for the first time, or at least the first time in a while. So there was some slowdown there. But yeah, there is more individual decision making you have to do per turn, or per action, I should say, than in, I guess, like something like Pathfinder, which is a little bit more straightforward most of the time, especially at like lower levels. Which again kind of plays into something that I was liking about the system, in that each individual round or each individual attack felt more important. But at the same time, yeah, there is more decision making that you have to do, both as a player and I would think as a GM.
For sure. I mean, I think even the individual roles, I would say like in Pathfinder, if we're doing that as an example, it's like whether or not you hit the first roll on your attack, right? And then it's like, do I use a second attack? Do I care about the multiple attack penalty, right? If I miss, like, am I going to go for it again? Am I going to take that chance, or do you use my action for something else, right? But for this, for my game, it's like, oh my god, did I crit? Does this guy have stun? Am I safe to do something kind of a little bit harder? Like, oh, if this dude has stun, or maybe I can get some edge, I can use a special ability to make my next attack unguardable. So now this dude can't guard the next attack. And then you can set up some stuff where, if you landed one attack, you blast somebody far away, they hit into a wall, they get really stunned, and then you come in with a clincher move to just kind of finish them off. So it kind of makes like your decision making is kind of like broken up in the round of like how things are going. But I think that's fun. Like that's the point. Like when you're playing the games, or like playing fighting games, it's you're not on autopilot. You're always trying to like plan stuff out ahead, or like react to what situations you find yourself in, and like trying to eke out any sort of advantage.
Yeah. And just so people don't get mad about it, I'm just using Pathfinder as an example of a D20 RPG, and I think this could probably apply to several others. it does feel more like you have to focus on your individual combats as opposed to like group combats, or at least in the playtest it felt a bit like that, where we were kind of more focused on what we were doing, and then we did get kind of separated a bit, which I don't know if that was like an intentional thing or it's a result of how the rules function.
Yeah, well, it was less about kind of corralling people into like a group and attacking them from like different sides, I guess, and more about like kind of facing each other off in individual fights, where I know that your character was kind of, you're basically just kind of walking through a bunch of stuff, and then all of a sudden with a couple of crits, one of my NPCs were able to kind of snowball those crits into really doing some heavy damage to you, and then all of a sudden you're kind of like in the back foot. Mm-hmm. And at that moment, Tim's character, who has the ability to kind of taunt people, was able to taunt a couple of them and pull them away from you so you weren't going to get dogpiled, which is kind of like that group interaction. It's just that Calvin, you just played a character who was all about, I'm going to beat somebody up.
As I'm known to do.
Yeah, like I mentioned in during the Playtest session, he put a big tough girl in front of Calvin, and Calvin's like, yeah, that's the one.
I just have certain tropes.
Yeah, don't worry, dog, I understand. But yeah, it's again supposed to be like less of you like 2v1ing, 1v1ing the scenarios. And that happens actually pretty often in Roll20 games as well, Roll20, D20 games. Mm-hmm. Where you're fighting a bunch of goblins, but actually you are fighting like 2 goblins over here and 2 goblins over there, and it's less about like actually dealing with a horde. But also there isn't a lot of area effect attacks. That's very specific. I mean, there is, but it doesn't happen so often, and if you were able to take advantage of it, that's great. But like that's not really the point of the game.
Yeah. So like, I guess less enemies, but each one feels more impactful. It seems like it's less of a swarm kind of game, unless you have some specific NPCs you might build for that.
I mean, yeah, not in development, not made yet, but maybe. When I played during the playtest, I didn't really have like a specific design. I just was like, these enemies have access to light, medium, heavy attacks, and all of their stats are set to D, and that was like super easy to put together. Because I was like, this is just generic fighting man, right? Like they're ruffians that are accosting these people who are traveling on the road, and then everyone started throwing hands. Which I don't even think that you as players noticed that they were just actually that bare bones simple. Maybe because it was like everything was kind of new still, but they didn't really do anything crazy. They just had options.
No, didn't really notice, to be honest.
Yeah, which is kind of the strength of the game. Honestly, like, I feel sometimes that NPCs kind of get like there's all this stuff having to level adjust and everything like that, but like I feel like my goal for this game is to make it so that it's easy for the GMs to customize NPCs. So it's like you just give them like the stats are really simple. It only goes up like a number of dice steps, and if you just want your NPC to be good at something, just make him good at something, and then add in like a special, not even like a special attack or special ability or just a passive that says like this person moves really fast or something like that, and all of a sudden the game feels really dynamic. It's less about like, I guess on the GM side, it's about like building up, like doing the narrative on the fly each time the dice gets rolled, describing those individual punches and kicks and like the cool scenes that get played out, right? And like the tension of like you're not knowing if this punch is gonna land or not, right?
Speaking of, did you want to get into the special meter and tension mechanics?
Yeah, so I haven't really figured out what to do with tension. The tension's going to be a resource actually for the GM, but I'm going to figure out how to do with that. It's supposed to be like scene setting, maybe like being able to all of a sudden make an NPC into like the boss because you beat up all his friends and now it's mad, that kind of thing. But the special meter, it is like a special meter from a fighting game or EX meter or Ultra meter or whatever you guys are using in that fighting game or you get experience with. But you can use it to use special attacks, which are generally like cooler, better attacks, which are stronger or have cooler properties, or just say like you can't dodge this attack or you can't block this attack, that kind of stuff. And the special ability gets built up over the course of the combat. Every turn the players get one. They start off with some based on their level. And normal moves, which are just kind of like your regular attack moves that you get to learn, they have special versions of themselves, So you can turn a normal attack, you can use the special attack version of it by spending the special meter that's listed there. So it's kind of like the resource to build up and then cash out it, right? So, you know, in fighting games, you kind of like build yourself up, you do a couple normal attacks, and then you land the attack, you set yourself up, and then you activate your super at the end of your combo, and then you destroy somebody's health bar, right?
Yeah, I did kind of like that mechanic, just building up that resource over time, especially the way it played in my character, because they had like an ability that they built special meter, like their value increased every time they took damage. So that kind of changed up the risk-reward balance for me a bit, where even if I did take damage, I could at least build up this meter, and then when it came back around to my turn, I could do a more devastating move in response.
Yeah, and some of the moves are just like even you get to move. So another interesting part about the system is that when you dodge, you can't stay in the same spot. You have to move unless you took the ability spot dodge. But like if you have the ability to spot dodge, then you can dodge and not move if you like to, or other abilities allow you to move towards your opponent. But if you are attacked and you have to dodge out the way, you have to move. You can't move closer to your enemy. You actually have to move away from your enemy because you're actually dodging out the way, right? Mm-hmm. If you do successfully, then you're able to you move, which is really cool because sometimes like if you're like in regular games, I guess regular D20 games, if you're kind of being singled out as like a target for all the NPCs, then you're kind of just like getting wailed on. You can't do anything about it, right? Until it's your turn. And I find that like if you have all the attention on you, you should also be like able to act, react, or move, or make that advantage towards you as well. So if someone's really focusing down you, like maybe you're able to dodge out the way and then just move out of the range of the rest of their attacks, or reposition yourself and take that opportunity of you being the center of attention for a split second to like kind of like roll or move or maneuver your way to your actual target you want to get to. And then when you take your turn, you're able to just use your actions to attack instead of move. Mm-hmm. Oh, I should probably also add too that the way that the round structure works, at the top of the round, players tell the GM whether they want to take action or wait. So it's kind of like you're, you know, take up a stance. You're letting your opponent kind of take the initiative, so you can counterattack them. So you get to, or like maybe you're taking a break and you're like hit a defensive stance and you're trying to catch your breath and reanalyze the situation. So when you wait, you activate a wait ability, and all wait abilities kind of activate like simultaneously, and you're just able to like heal yourself immediately. Because, you know, sometimes in games when like you're low in HP and the healer's not going to take their turn or whatever, or you have to wait so long to get back to your turn, it's like it sucks, and you're gonna eat it, even though like, you know, people are standing right there. So kind of like catching the moment, instead of you taking action, you wait, and you're able to get a little bit of a benefit. But the only thing is that you're not able to use your actions, or you're not able to make attacks or reposition unless somebody attacks you and you dodge, or you make a counterattack, or you have a move that has the charge ability, which you're able to use at the end of the round after everyone else is gone who's taken action. So it's kind of like you get into your stance, you charge up, you dodge a cool move, and then at the end, after everyone's turn, you launch your cool special attack.
Okay, you said the wait abilities would activate simultaneously. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you mean by that, like in game terms? Because like they can't all happen at the same time, so like would that be like a secondary sort of mini round at the end of the current round?
Only players get wait abilities, so I guess it's really up to the players how they want to get it resolved. Yeah, so it's not an issue of like the NPCs having to deal with the wait and stuff. It's like resolving that kind of things. It would be like the PCs kind of have to play it out, and the game is pretty heavily weighted towards the PCs, to be honest with you. Like it is like more like a heroic fantasy game, so the players have a lot of agency. They have a lot of abilities to beat up NPCs, but that's kind of the fun of playing the game, right? That's kind of what you want to do.
Okay, we did talk about attacks and damage and building up that special meter. I did want to get into, I guess, more to do with taking damage, because you do have a thing here that I quite like, which feels a little Lancer inspired. When your HP goes down to 0, different conditions that may be applied to your character at that point.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I think Lancer to me was the first game that I experienced this whole, you when you're at 0 HP, you're not dead thing. Like now I'm just like, I wish more games had this in because it's cooler. So if you do go down to 0 HP, you actually get to make a choice. Again, lots of choices for players in this game. So you get to choose to either be battered, which means you reduce the number of actions you take per turn to 1 instead of 2, or you could be bruised. All of your skill ranks count as 1 stage lowered, and then you reset your HP to half of what your maximum value is. And right now, I have it as every player has 10 HP unless you have like an ability or something or a technique that allows you to get more HP that you've learned, like a passive. So you go from 10 to 5, and then if you are reduced to 0 HP again, you have to make a knockout roll. You roll a d6, and then on a 1 to 4, you're down but not out. So you can keep fighting, and then you tick off the other one that you didn't have, battered or bruised. And then at this point, you can choose to keep going or retreat. So if you keep going, you tick off battered and bruised, or if you retreat, you like move to the sidelines, I would say, and you gain the ability called Power of Friendship, where you're able to just kind of give an ally who can hear you with edge. So you kind of just like those moments where like, if you're listeners, if you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, when like, you know, I don't know, like Piccolo gets his ass handed to him and he's off to the sidelines and Goku has to show up, and you're like, or like Krillin gets his ass handed to him at the sidelines and Goku shows up and he's like, you beat up my friend, and then, you know, you have to go in and Goku goes Super Saiyan, and that's kind of the vibe of it. Giving players the option to just nope out of the fight when things are down, or to keep going, and you then reset your HP to 1. You still have battered, you still have bruised, and then if you do get knocked out again, you have to roll the dice again, but at this time, or the knockout check with a d6 again, but you said you rolled 2d6, taking the highest value, and then on a 5 to 6, you're knocked out, which means that you're unconscious on the floor, and allies can like pick you up and defend you and stuff like that, but otherwise, you know, you're at the NPC's mercy. Or if you roll a double 6 on that knockout roll, you succumb to your injuries and you die a fool or a hero. So yeah, you can choose your own path of like how much of a hero or cool, you know, fighting person you are.
I do. This is something that I don't get a lot of in tabletop RPG games. That kind of stood out to me in Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's just I like when you can do something even when you're knocked out, because otherwise you're just kind of there. Like you don't get to do anything if your character is completely out. So I like that there's at least a possibility that you have an option to do something to assist your allies, because otherwise it just kind of feels like very boring for the person who's in that position. Like I have seen games where someone, just by some twist of the dice, like they get knocked out early, or they go down early, or they're just dying basically, and then they kind of have to wait for everyone else they gotta sit there and watch everyone else play the game.
Yeah, for sure. And it kind of helps with the snowball. Like if the players are going down and the bad guys are winning, like that's good for the bad guys. I mean, not saying that that's an issue, because, you know, I always play a pretty decent bad guy. Right? Like, hey man, the players showed up to my evil dojo challenging me to stop, you know, messing with the peasants down on the mountain, right? It's not my fault. They came into my house, right? Like
the house you were robbing.
Exactly. No, Calvin, I owned it. I owned this house through fists and violence. Okay, like I earned it, right? Like I beat up all those dudes to be on top, and no damn upstart player is gonna stop me. And so you knock them out. Yeah, no, it's cool. I like the idea that, you know, you have lots of stages of defeat. Like you can, at any point you could be like, maybe I had enough now. Like,
right.
Yeah, giving the players something to do when they're knocked out is pretty fun too. Actually, I think this is really coming from Sentinels of the Multiverse, because, you know, when you're knocked out in that game, you kind of flip the card over and you get these cool little actions you can do to help whoever's still in the game on the player side to try and eke out a win if things are going bad.
Yeah. I don't know. I really like that in the game. We should talk about the Sentinels RPG at some point, because I got all that stuff and I never got to play it.
Telling you, man, I said it before, like there's so many like games out there.
True.
To run. We're as spoiled as being alive right now. Tabletop RPGs are so fun. There's so many of them. Like
especially more
Sheesh.
recently.
Love it. Oh yeah.
I do hope people out there are trying new games that, match their tastes. If you're not into the typical, like, fantasy stuff, try out some sci-fi RPGs or mech RPGs or superhero RPGs, because there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah, or like martial arts inspired RPGs like this
Yeah.
one. Yeah. So, and again, too, right? Like, what I wanted to also incorporate with like the take action and wait system, it's like kind of represent that patience versus like, I have to go in kind of like no chill vibe, or even just like being able to choose to just react to situations, or again, like sometimes on players' turns they want to do anything cool because they're beaten up, right? So they're just like, okay, wait, I'm just gonna wait and just wait it out, right? I don't need to take action and trying to get involved or whatever. And it kind of has this back and forth because you up front one of the players or the couple of the players who are overweighted just does whatever they want to do and get it out of the way. It frees up all of the turn count to just be focused down onto the players who did take action and the kind of like back and forth between that and the NPCs, and they're taking turns and stuff like that. So it actually speeds up rounds, surprisingly.
I did want to make sure we touched on the characters and chatted a bit about the playtest. Is there anything else like in the mechanics that you want to cover first? Because there are different like properties and battle states and stuff, like different tags and conditions and things. I wasn't sure how specific you wanted to get in with those just yet, or if you just wanted to get into the player characters.
Well, I just wanted to quickly touch base on battle states. They're kind of like your status effects or conditions in other games. But the cool thing about them, they only last, a lot of them, they say until the next attack. So really they're representing of like short windows of time, unless it's something big like you've been knocked down and then all of a sudden you're at the mercy of whoever knocked you down. But a lot of the battle states are just like until X happens to you, the person gets an advantage against you. So if your guard's broken, your next attack you can't guard, and if someone attacks you, you just can't have that defensive options, but you can still defend yourself in other ways, unless someone's using like an uncounterable or like undodgeable attack, and then all of a sudden you just got set up real bad. But that's the fun of the game, getting those situations. But the players could, that took a lot of rolls to get to, and that's kind of the fun part about it. That's where the little nuances come in. But yeah, we can talk about the characters. I'm down for that.
Yeah, because I did want to just touch at least a little briefly on the playtest itself, so we could get into the characters, which I guess are meant to relatively represent like low-level test characters.
Yeah, they're supposed to be, but when we did playtest it, they had a lot more abilities because I tend to throw a lot of stuff into everything, and rightfully Calvin and Tim was like, this is a lot. I was like, yeah, you're right. I mean, it wasn't a lot in terms of like there's so much going on. It's more like there's just a lot of options to choose from for what to do with all these like different attacks and stuff that you can use.
Yeah, especially for a low-level character, like what they were supposed to represent.
Yeah, but I did pare that back. I mean, when the document comes out, like they will have less, and there will be less stuff for people to track, or like very clearly defined game plans for each characters that people can get into the groove of what they are. So yeah, Calvin, you played the Berserker. I might change that name. I'm not a big fan of it, but like that's kind of like the placeholder name for it.
Yes, I indeed did. The Berserker character, it's built for toughness. It feels like it's kind of built like for strength, really, with a pretty good martial arts stat, and I think a very good toughness stat for a character of that level. I kind of set myself up to I wanted to be the one to just dole out heavy damage and take heavy damage. The dice were not very helpful, admittedly.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier at one point, because Calvin's toughness is B, so Calvin's character has a 4 of a value, so they basically ignores light attacks. So I used a lot of heavy attacks against Calvin, which turns out was the right call. And I rolled a couple of crits and was able to kind of snowball the crits, because once you're stunned, you can use a stun on attack to get basically bonus damage, which is you roll 2 dice, taking the highest one. That I definitely lifted from Icon, for sure. Thanks, Tom. That's a really brilliant idea. But yeah, so it just makes it more likely for you to crit again and kind of snowball with that stun, which HP isn't very high in this game. The damage isn't very high, but if you're just rolling maximum like 8s, you're gonna whittle down a character pretty fast.
Yeah. I do wonder if the HP needs to be like a smidge higher, but Like, I can see why you settled on that particular number, but given the values available, I mean, I don't know. It might just be more of a playtesting
I didn't tell you to roll poorly. Like, if you just rolled great on your counterattacks, it would have been fine. But that's the risk.
That's how it goes. I mean, yeah, it also just keeps the number of rounds pretty low. So I guess depending on what you want to, like, how you want to balance it, because I can see something just being like 2 or 3 rounds if a thing has 10 HP and you're capable of doing like a D6 or a D8 for damage.
Well, we did go 3 rounds in about 45 to an hour, which was like really good for a game that you just learned. Like on the spot, and it felt like things flowed really well in terms of just like actual rolling the dice. I think if playing in person is gonna feel great, just because
I do agree with that. I think it'd be easier to decide what to roll in person.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like, you can just pick up the dice and just roll it immediately. But just to kind of describe what the Berserker is, it has an ability called Dragon Scales. When you do guard and you take no damage because you're so thick, the person gets rebounded by your muscles and you get stunned. They get stunned. You're so strong, the ability Brute Strength, where if you critically hit, it means you get that cool stun or edge bonus on a 5+ on a damage roll. So like, you don't have to roll the 8. You actually have like a 50% chance essentially to critically hit, which is great because you're so tough and strong. Get extra HP, and you get special meter when you are taking damage, but you have a 4, so you're not taking a lot of damage a lot of the time. And I gave it special cancel, where when you land a basic attack, you can use a special attack version of it for 0 actions by spending a little bit extra meter to do so. So I guess we could go talk about like the actual like attacks in the game. So attacks in the game are like normals or specials. For instance, Crushing Grab is a medium martial arts. That's the normal version of Crushing Grab. So like every learned attack, except for the basic strike attack, has like a property to it. They all have like names for them or keywords. So this one is a command grab. So you grapple the defender, which means you pick them up, you slam them into the ground, and you move them to a space adjacent to you. They're knocked down because you grab their face, you slam into the ground. But if you do miss, you're wide open. So kind of again mimicking that, like if you whiff a command grab in a fighting game, like you're gonna eat it, that kind of deal. So you're wide open. The next attack that hits you is gonna be automatically hits. Or like they get bonus damage against that, or sorry, bonus dice against it. So they're more likely to get hit by it because you whiffed. But the special attack version of that is called Cyclone Swing. So for one special, you could turn your Crushing Grab into a Cyclone Swing, and then when you land the attack, before you're able to reposition the person and like knock them to the ground, you're able to move yourself to another point adjacent to them and then move them again. So it's kind of like extending that reposition ability, and it could be a cool way for you as a fighter to like reposition yourself on the map, because you use this dude's face as like a way to swing around before you slam him into the ground, and kind of like flow your way through the battlefield that way. Or if you are being surrounded, it's a good way of just kind of getting out of there without using like a move action. Every class archetype, or whatever we're gonna call it, maybe fighting style or fighter. Actually, fighter's pretty good. They also have a special attack that's solely you have to use special meter for it. And for the Berserker, it's called Dragon Slayer. It's just a heavy martial arts attack that somebody can't counter. Because it's heavy, it can be countered by like medium or light, like those attacks can be, but specifically because this move is to slay dragons, you can't counter it, and if you eat it, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah, so you can either dodge or just try to tough it out with a block.
But if you're knocked down, it would be really hard to dodge the Dragon Slayer. So yeah, the game plan is you land Crushing Grab, knock them to the ground, and then use the Dragon Slayer to finish them off.
Which I don't think I managed to pull anything like that off.
I don't know. Calvin's also apprehensive of like using. If you're a type of player who doesn't like to spend stuff, like I don't know, man, it would be a tough game.
I don't know about that. But yeah, no, again, I like having those options. It might be a bit much for like a low-level character, but I like that those options exist. I am curious, though, what you would do with like progression.
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll figure that one out later. But yeah, I guess this is like the minimum viable product. I want people to kind of get their hands on it, mess around with it, get some feedback. I do need to probably, it'll be linked if I finish it, where I'll add some NPC information so like, you know, your group can play it. Or honestly, you guys can probably just fight, like do a 1v1 with these characters and do some roles. I think it would be kind of fun to see like some of the characters go at each other. Truthfully, I'm a mechanics guy first. This game has a lot of cool mechanics, and that's why I'm excited to talk about it, and that's why, you know, I'm putting so much energy to make it. This is the game.
Yeah, and as Ramon said, it'll be linked below for people if they want to check it out. I do note that you're also working on another game at the moment, because you are sort of working with Trey on the mechanized body game, which will have some stuff for that linked below as well too, if people want to check that out on YouTube, how that playtest is going.
Yeah, he has playtest on there. It's not linked to his, I guess, NHP Nakua Station Shaka channel. It's like his own personal channel, which is pretty funny. But yeah, link down there. Yeah, I was working with him on that. That's still going strong. And yeah, hopefully people check out this game again. I guess we talked about it before, but like I made a couple of changes, and yeah, I wanted to kind of put it out there for people to grab and use and see what's cool about it, because I think it feels fun. So hopefully I'm right.
Yeah, it was like over a year since we last looked at this particular game. So yeah, if the document's available, it'll be linked below. It will be on our website, of course, which we are starting to use more often. Yeah, Ramon, is there anything else you want to say about the game before we head off? Hopefully, you know, people are interested in the idea of it, so they can go ahead and give it a try.
Yeah, give it a try. If you got it, it should really be like an hour or two for like a Friday night or a Saturday if you got nothing to do, or if you want to just read over and roll some dice and just give me some feedback. I would love to hear, you know, your thoughts on like the characters and like the system and stuff like that, as well as, yeah, there is a way for people to give feedback on the website, Calvin.
Yeah, there is a contact form people can use. It's just a very basic contact form, but you can contact us through there or through the comments on our videos or through any other social media. Yeah,
hit us up on Twitter or whatever that you would like to contact us on. I'll see it and let me know your thoughts about it. If you guys like it, if you hate it, I would love to know, and I'd love to know why, because I would love to make a product that works for people.
Yeah, I don't know. I will leave creating an RPG up to other people.
It is hard for sure, unless you get the sauce going, and then you're like, wait, I have a good idea. But yeah, actually, we probably will stream or maybe put up like a playtest of the game so people can see it once more development has gone on. I do admire Trey just kind of like running a campaign while he's developing the system. So as like every episode or session he puts out, something has changed a little bit. So it's kind of cool to see that happen.
Yeah. So we will of course have that below for people to go check out, and the document for the project versus tabletop RPG.
Yeah, it sounds cooler too, right? Yeah.
I feel like you're going to keep debating the name, so I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. You know. But it's also, I have to say, there is like a big renaissance of fighting games. There's like more fighting games being published out, like 20-year-old franchises getting new installments these days. So it's a blessed time to be in the FGC. And hopefully I can capture a little bit of that magic and make a game out of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for the episode for this week. Yeah. Thanks a ton out there, everybody, for swinging by and listening on whichever platform you happen to be on. I hope we can this year start talking about more games, because that's something that we keep saying we're going to do. So whether it's something like this, like a indie project that Ramon's working on, or maybe other games that we just don't talk about enough or have not talked about at all, you know, maybe we'll get into the Sentinels RPG now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, and if you're an indie tabletop RPG person who has published the system, reach out. Maybe it would be cool to have you on the podcast. We could talk about your game and how cool and awesome it is.
Yeah, we do always want to have like more people on, so, you know. Yeah, if you have a game that you want us to talk about, whether it's a game you've developed or a game you're just interested in, just drop it in a comment. We do have our list of games to get to, so hopefully one of the things we do this year is clearing out that list. In addition to other stuff on the channel, we have gaming streams, which should hopefully be starting back this week with Baldur's Gate and Armored Core 6. And on Sundays, we'll be continuing The Evil Within, finishing the first game and then the second game. I would love to squeeze Spider-Man in there somewhere because I just want to play Spider-Man. But maybe I'll save that for just me. You know what's weird is I'm playing it on my own and I keep wanting to make commentary. It's like, should I just stream this?
Oh no, Calvin. You just are a streamer now. If a streamer makes a joke, no one's watching. Yeah. Did it even happen? I don't know, man.
I don't know. I'm so torn. Gosh, because I really want to play it, but I also want to make jokes out loud. Oh, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I can stream 4 days a week. Who knows?
Maybe Calvin could just live. Maybe Calvin will just be like an all-day streamer. Like
that would be the dream. Oh man, but yeah, we'll see if it manages to make its way into the schedule. But for sure, we're gonna be continuing with the things that exist there right now, because I did put a bit of a poll out just to test the waters, and I think people are interested in seeing more Armored Core, so definitely doing that. In addition, I want to shout out all the people linked below. We'll have a link to Panic at the Dojo, since it was such an inspiration. But as well, our regulars, we have a bunch of Lancer stuff linked below. If you're into the Lancer RPG, go check out all those people and all their incredible work. Go check out Vault Companions, which will have a link below. Recently wrapped up a Mass Effect RPG series on that channel, and there was an announcement at the very end of the next series that's coming to that channel. So, if you're into seeing more, like, there was Fallout, and then there was Mass Effect, so if you're into seeing more video game-based tabletop RPGs, I think you're going to be interested in what is about to happen next over there. And of course, the Untold Stories project, where I'm going to be at a couple days a week. Freedom League Dark, I think, is coming back the same day this episode will be out, as well as something happening on Tuesdays. The character for that I've been very excited about. It's been very in my head. It's been, I don't know, I'm just really excited to get into that character. I'll just say there's a reason I've been wanting to play Spider-Man recently, and leave it at that. But that's about it. Ramon, anything else before we head off?
I think we're good to go.
All right. Well, for all of our GMs and players out there with their own projects that they're working on, just remember to keep on winning with dice, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.